again, welcome. And this is the title of the presentation you're going to hear today. It's more than a presentation. It's going to be guidance from our new president and CEO, Dr. David Franklin. And the title of this is The Impact Puzzle. The question that he's going to ask us, but we're going to all ask ourselves, are you making an impact that changes lives? Okay, Shai, next slide, please. As we always do, we go through a few preliminaries. I am not going to belabor this. You've all seen it. We're not going to click how to change your name. We're going to move on. You have changed your name in past presentations, and I'm sure you are who you want to be called by now. So let's move on. Okay, so we are going to be recording, and something that's very important is the note here that says if you did not pre-register for this event, we just want to make sure that you drop an email in so that we can continue to send you information for upcoming presentations, information and materials from this one. This is not just a presentation. This is a mark in time when we are going to be looking at doing things a different way, a more effective way, and in a way where we can make the impact. And for faith organizations, we can fulfill the assignments that we've been given. These are ministries for a lot of us. And so we're getting some guidance here today. Next, you want to stay connected. Okay, so you know our team. You've seen our team, Dr. Franklin, and I'm a lead consultant with and the program director for A Model Built on Faith. Our good friend, Michelle Miles Chambers, who's the director of faith. And I think, Mickey, are you on? I believe she's here. Okay. Saran Stokes.
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm having issues unplugging my button. Sorry.
Unplug your button and stay for a sec. And then Shai, who is the operations manager for CUR, and then Simone Stokes. And we cannot forget someone who keeps going into the background like some kind of apparition, and we keep pulling her to the front. And that is my dear, dear friend of many, many years, Sandra Alexander. And even though her picture is not here in a postage stamp, Sandra is here with us, and she's not going anywhere, no matter how hard she tries, okay? So Michelle, I would like you to just say a couple of words and also to welcome our new president and CEO.
Sure. Apologies for no video. I have low bandwidth, so I'm trying to work with my internet right now. But welcome. Thank you guys for coming to another OCUR project. This is going to be an exciting session. It's going to be an exciting learning experience because we know that if we don't make impact in the community and with our community members with the work that we're doing, then why are we doing the work? I am so excited and so astounded and so honored to have Dr. David Franklin with us to kind of, well, he's the captain of the ship now. And so as his teammates, we have to do what we're supposed to do to ensure that our ship is sailing in the right direction. So we're so very excited that he's on board with us and that he is committed to making an impact for faith-based organizations and community-based organizations. So welcome, Dr. David Franklin. You guys are so blessed to have David running OCUR and presenting today. So sit back, relax, put on your seatbelt, be present, because we are in for a great, exciting learning experience to put those tools in our tool belt, or if you have a toolbox, whatever type of tool, instrument you have, be sure to take all those tools with you. As Carmen said, please put your emails in because it's important that you all are present, that you know what we're doing here, you show up, that you invite other people. So I want you all to commit to reaching out to 5 additional folks that are from faith-based and community-based organizations to have them join us. This is a great opportunity. And guess what? Every single session, all of the excitement, all of the planning, all of the tools are absolutely complimentary. So be present, bring someone along for the ride. Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Miles Chambers, our Director of Faith's San Francisco Foundation. Next slide. So I am particularly honored to be able to introduce Dr. David Franklin. David and I go back just months, probably, maybe close to a year. I don't know, but I feel as if I have known him for years and years and years. Anytime I can argue with somebody, they're my best friend. And David and I have meetings of minds all the time and ideas, and it's really a stimulating thing to be his friend and to talk to him. He will tell you the truth. I will tell him the truth, and I am having so much fun working with David. One of the things I want to just, not to make this a long thing, but one of the things I want to make really clear about the particular blessing of having Dr. David Franklin here is because we talk about, and in all of the things that we have written, the various communications, we say nonprofits and faiths organizations. Because both of those arenas are represented here, and everything that we talk about applies to both. But the thing that's so amazing, and the way that I see God's hand in this, is that, as you will see, David is a pastor. He is a man of God. He's a strategist. He's trained in both of these. So he's a perfect balance for us. He's as I have told him, he's young-ish. He can relate to all of us. He's just the right person for the right time. And this is an assignment for him. He doesn't take it lightly. And so I have chills because I am so honored and so excited. So let me introduce him. Dr. David Franklin, PhD, is an accomplished nonprofit strategist and minister who has devoted his life to creating, developing, and fostering the growth of community-based organizations. As a respected leader in community engagement and impact, Dr. Franklin specializes in nurturing health in organizations through strategic development. His extensive experience combined with his inspirational leadership style, and I might add his spirit, has been instrumental in establishing initiatives that empowered communities and secure funds to enhance programmatic impact for those in need of support. His steadfast dedication to transformation and impact has not only positively impacted lives worldwide, but also successfully raised millions of dollars for grassroots safety net organizations. Dr. Franklin holds a BA in Business Administration, a Master's of Divinity in Theological Studies, and a PhD in Organization Development. And we are so blessed, so honored to introduce Dr. David Franklin.
Well, it is a pleasure and an honor to be able to not only share in this moment, but to join this amazing organization. I have to tell you, this really does feel like a gift to be able to return back to the Bay Area. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area, so to be able to come home and offer some support and direction for this incredible organization, and then to be able to partner with all of you all who are on this call and other nonprofit organizations and businesses, I really do consider it an honor. So thank you for being here this morning. And we've had a lot of introductions and kind of set up, but let me just say two others very quickly. I have to acknowledge our previous executive director, Sandra Alexander. She has been with the organization for 40 years, and were it not for her blood, sweat, and tears, David Glover's blood, sweat, and tears, we would not be here today. And so the fact that she has ensured that the baton has been protected so that it could be passed along is nothing short than a miracle. And so I just want to honor her. She's on the session today. thank you for your work and your dedication to this organization and to the city of Oakland and beyond. So thank you, Sandra, for that. I also want to acknowledge that one of our board members is on the call, none other than Servant B.K. Woodson, also a incredible leader and a pastor in this city. Most importantly, well, he's an author, but he's also a man of wisdom. And I really do appreciate his wisdom that he has imparted to me and many others. So thank you for being on the call today. Well, listen, I really want to jump into this because I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about this topic. I'm passionate about organizations, nonprofits in particular, making an impact. And so I really wanted all of us to kind of lean into the content that we have today. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat process whatever it is that you may want to kind of think through, or if you need to get it out, go ahead and put it right there in the chat. We will probably not get to questions until the end, but I also don't want you to lose your question. So if you need to drop it in the chat, you need to write a note to yourself, either is fine, but I definitely want to respond to questions. I just want to do it in a way that is most productive. I also need to say one other thing, and that is we're going to talk about strategy today, but I need you to kind of do some things for me real quick. I need you to take some books off the shelf of your mind when we start thinking about strategy. And one of those books I want you to take off of your mind is off the shelf of your mind is the idea that strategy or strategic planning has to take 6 months, and it's filled with a long process that produces a document that we never use, right? Anybody gone through that process before? Not only that, but I also want you to take off the shelf of your mind the book that thinks of strategy in the way of it's only meant for professional consultants to do strategy. I want you to take that off the shelf of your mind. And I also want you to take off the shelf of your mind this idea that strategy happens around a table where you got whiteboards or some kind of bulletin board or markers or sheets of paper. Right? I want us to kind of expand our understanding of how we can get to strategies that actually make impact, because I believe that it will help us propel forward into the work that will make our organizations more impactful in our community. So with that said, I want to go ahead and share my presentation with you here, and let's see if we can make some sense out of this topic today. All right, if everybody can see that, give me a thumbs up, and let's jump into this concept, the impact puzzle. Are you making an impact that is changing lives? I really want us to center around the idea of, is our work producing life change? Now I'm showing this because we put out a flyer, and at the bottom it had several questions that we are going to answer, or several ideas that we are going to address. And the first 5 ideas we're going to take care of in the first point that I'm going to deal with today. And that is, how do we create program strategies that respond to your clients' needs? How do we innovate, how do we involve community in designing relevant programming? Relevance, are we making an impact that is relevant, and how do we assess that relevance? Outreach, what is real outreach and why do we need it? All of those we're going to take care of in the first point. I'm going to show you what that first point is in a second. And then the last 2 questions we'll deal with the last 2 points, which is talking about how to partner and build a team that you can collaborate with. And then also we want to make sure that our impact is actually influencing our funding. And so with that said, this is kind of our agenda or our overview for today. Before we can really capture this topic, I want you to understand the difference between charity versus impact. Then we're going to talk about adaptive strategies. That's where we're going to get those first 5 bullet points. And then we're going to go into collaboration, impact funding, conclusion, and then we will deal with some questions. Now, for those of you who are note takers, this is a quick note for you. I have broken a rule of presentation etiquette that in fact, I normally break this rule and I'm breaking it today, but it is with intentionality. Many of my slides have they're content rich. Let me say it that way. My slides are content rich. I did it intentionally so that once we send this presentation out after the session, you will have definitions, you'll have descriptions that are available to you right on the slide, which hopefully allows you to only take notes on the things that are like really important for you, a concept that pops in your mind that you don't want to forget. Those are the things that I really want you to take notes on so that you can really listen to the concepts that will be presented today. So with that being said, let's jump in. And we'll get to a story here so it's not just all monologue, but I gotta set this up first. I have to set up the difference between charity and impact because you guys give me 1 second. I need to move. I apologize for this, but I need to move you all. There we go. And we're back. I want to describe the difference between charity versus impact because I believe that this will help us to kind of set the framework for making a real impact. And so when we think about charity, charity is a concept that typically refers to acts of kindness or generosity, often in the form of giving money, resources, or time to individuals. The focus of charity is providing immediate relief. And that's the phrase that I want you to focus on. When we think about charity from a technical standpoint, charity is focused on providing immediate relief for pressing issues. So these are things, you're feeding hungry, you're providing shelter for the homeless, but it's generally, when we think of shelter for the homeless, from a charity standpoint, we're thinking of temporary shelter, right? It's not necessarily alleviating homelessness. When we think about charity, it's aid for victims that have suffered through natural disasters. The act of charity is often seen as a moral or ethical duty, and it's generally directed towards symptoms of societal problems. That's another important phrase. If you're taking anything from this, charity is about resolving immediate relief, it's providing immediate relief to symptoms of societal problems. And that's important, but I would love for us to choose something that I think is more valuable, and that is impact. Impact is a broader concept, and it deals with long-term effects of actions or initiatives, whether they're charitable or not. In the context of nonprofit organizations, impact often refers to tangible outcomes and changes that result from charitable acts. I want us to drop down to this final sentence here before I give you a little more context. When we think about impact, I so want you to have this in your heart. I really want you to grasp this. The focus of impact is on creating lasting change. It's not dealing with symptoms. It's on creating lasting change. It's not just about immediate relief. It's on creating lasting change and addressing the root causes of societal problems and not just their symptoms. So when we think about homelessness, if we are thinking about it from an impactful standpoint, we're thinking about it from the perspective of how do we keep people from being homeless? How do we prevent homelessness, right? How do we prevent homelessness? Not just how do we shelter people when they become homeless, but how do we keep them from being homeless from the start? And so those are the kinds of things that I want you to have in your mind as we go through this presentation, because I really believe that if we make an impact, not only will we do a better job at solving problems, but we will also have stronger organizations. So with that being said, the first step to impact is to adapt. And I've done a few presentations now for OCUR, or for San Francisco Foundation's FACE program. And in all of them, I have mentioned this concept, but I'm going to give it a little bit more meat on the bone today, so that we can really translate the idea into practical reality in the organizations that we lead. And if we're thinking about how we can adapt as an organization, the key idea is to just get better consistently. That's what I really want us to do, get better consistently. And I'm going to start with a story of an organization that some of you might have heard of. It's called the Homeboy Industries. It's founded way back in 1988 in response to the needs of gang-involved youth in East Los Angeles. Now, that in and of itself is a noble goal, but for them to become who they are today, they had to adapt. And so I want you to see this case study that I pulled together for you. The organization initially focused on providing job opportunities to former gang members, but they realized that job placement was only part of the solution to deal with those who were coming out of gangs and dealing with issues related to being part of a gang or having gone to prison. They realized that many of these individuals needed more comprehensive support to turn their lives around. So they adapted. They came up with a way to address the challenge that they found. The first step was to expand services. Instead of just focusing on job placement, they provided comprehensive support, including things like mental health counseling, legal services, tattoo removal, educational classes, and workforce development training. Then they said, you know what? We don't just need to have one way that folks can get employed. They started with the Homeboy Bakery. Some of you guys may know this story. They started with the Homeboy Bakery, but they realized not everybody was going to go through the bakery program. So they're like, let's develop a ecosystem of industries where people can actually work. So they expanded it not only to bakeries, but now they have solar training programs where they're teaching people how to install solar panels on homes in California. They have t-shirt or merch and apparel company that they run through Homeboy Industries. They have a number of different programs or social enterprises, as they call them, that they developed in order to ensure that they were addressing the comprehensive needs of the population that they were serving. They didn't start there, but they adapted because they saw a need that needed to be addressed. They also decided that they were going to not only try to do this by themselves, but they were going to work with the community. So they started developing relationships with local nonprofits and businesses, and that helped to expand their ecosystem of support that they were able to provide to the individuals that they were serving, the ex-gang members. Then they went ahead and implemented the plan, and the results have been absolutely astonishing. They have literally helped thousands upon thousands of either previously incarcerated or ex-gang members, men and women, to live productive lives and find gainful employment. And I put this last little note at the bottom of this slide because I want you to understand that impact, when we focus on making impact, it also drives funding. In 2021, they had a revenue pool of nearly $60 million. $60 million. Approximately 6 million of that came from their industries. But I want you to hear this staggering number. 34 million, almost 35 million. It was 34.7 million of their 60 million raised came from individual donors. So they got corporate support. They got philanthropic support. Somebody's having a party in the background. Guy, if you can find that for me. I love it too. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. All right, do we have it under control? Hello?
Hi, I believe so. Yes.
Okay, very good.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. So I want you to understand that there is a real significant impact that takes place when we focus on impact in the work that we do. It will drive funding for you. And so I want us to keep that in mind as we go through here. And we're going to have several case studies that we review as we go through our time together today. But this should hopefully help to whet the appetite as it relates to the importance of adapting. Organizations that adapt effectively generate greater impact. Organizations that fail to adapt experience diminishing results. And diminishing results often looks like this: decreased relevance, decreased funding, ineffectiveness in terms of your programming is just not working well, it's not going well. Missed opportunities, this is a big one. Opportunities for funding or partnership are missed because an organization is too wedded to their existing strategy. You know, nobody raise your hand on that, but that's the reality, that a lot of times we're missing out on opportunities because we're too wedded to the existing strategy that we have. Not only that, but it also we also often are ignoring what's happening in the political, economic, social, and technological environment that's around us, the changes that are happening there, and therefore we're missing out on opportunities when we don't adapt. And then this is the last one, and this is hard, but loss of staff morale and high turnover. Rigid strategies create tense work environments. I'll say that again. Rigid strategies create tense work environments. And so we have to adapt, in part because it's important to keep our team engaged and motivated and committed to the future and to the success of the organization. 100% of organizations can improve their impact, and I want you to do that. So let's move from static strategies. Static strategies are rigid and they can be successful in a steady environment, but they limit an organization's ability to adapt in times of change. So let's move from static strategies to adaptive strategies. And adaptive strategies allow organizations to improve their effectiveness, allow organizations to remain relevant, increase their funding. It allows organizations to expand their team or sometimes strengthen their team. I think there's a lot of unmet potential on some of the teams that we have. And if we are focused on impact, I think some folks who you are going to be surprised about will rise to the occasion, and they're going to demonstrate some skill sets and some capacity that you may not have even realized existed before, because now you have focused on making an impact. And you're doing that by adapting your strategies to continue to get better at achieving your organization's mission. So I want us to move from static strategies to adaptive strategies. And the way that we can really have adaptive strategies that are working is through experimentation, feedback collection, and iterative improvements. But I know that's a little bit, that language is a little bit, maybe it's a little academic. And so I wanted to give you something else that just simplifies, but it's the same concepts. I want us to try, evaluate, and tweak. Those three are the same as what I put on this other slide. Experimentation, feedback collection, iterative improvements. When you're thinking about your organization and you're thinking about the strategies you're going to employ in order to make an impact, I want you to try something new. I want you to evaluate the success of what you tried. And then I want you to tweak. I want you to tweak the strategy based off of what you've learned after your evaluation. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about how you can try something new. There's various ways actually that you can try. Sometimes it's not always just in your programming, but that is a good place to start. Programming, one of the ways that you could try something new in your programming is to pilot a new program to better serve your organization's mission. For example, if a nonprofit's mission is to address homelessness, it could experiment with a new type of transitional housing program or a job training initiative. In other words, you could take a small part of your budget and you could say, you know what, we want to see if this is going to work. We're gonna pilot a small program. And I'll tell you, Okur is doing this right now. Many of you know that we run the David E. Glover Technology Center. And we're shifting our focus to really work towards ensuring that the technological education that we provide leads to employment in the tech industry. So we want folks being able to come to the David E. Glover Technology Center for them to be able to learn a skill set that they can actually use to market themselves in order to get employment in the technology industry. So we got a little pilot program. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet because we're still putting the finishing touches on it. But we've got a little pilot program that we're going to run. It's going to be super small. Like we're going to probably have 5, maybe 10 people that take part of this pilot program. We're going to really fine tune or limit our budget for this program, and we're going to see what we can learn by executing this program on a small level that then we can use to scale that program so that we can have maximum impact. So we're going to try something. We're going to evaluate based off of what we tried, and then we're going to go back into the laboratory, if you will, and tweak our strategy so that we can get better and we can reach more people. If there's a question, I'm not seeing it, but I'm gonna keep moving here. Another way that we can try is through technology. I feel like this is almost too obvious to note, and what I mean by that is that technology is changing all the time, and you don't hear me on both sides of this coin. You don't have to do every single new thing that comes out or use every single technology that's coming out. At the same time, you cannot ignore the new technological advances and not consider how they can help you increase your efficiency. So for an example, if you're developing a skill-based volunteering program, this is an example, right, through Volunteer Match. So one example that Volunteer Match way they leverage technology is that in order to ensure that organizations have the kind of volunteer support they need, they actually match volunteers, the skill set they have, with the kind of skill sets that are needed in various nonprofits. In fact, you can go up and sign up your organization for this, that you can say, hey, listen, I need these kinds of skills. You know, if you were trying to, the first thing that comes to mind is, building, temporary housing of some sort. You're like, oh, I need a carpenter, I need a contractor of some kind. You can go on Volunteer Match, you can make that need known. They will then provide you a list of available volunteers that may be able to support what you're trying to do. And the reason why I'm bringing this out is because that's a simple tweak that might have major impact for your organization. And it's utilizing technology, the power of a algorithm to actually influence the bottom line and the outcomes of your organization. And there's a ton of examples that we could talk about how technology is changing the landscape, and it's important for us to keep our eyes and ears open so that we can continue to increase our efficiency as an organization. Another thing you could try is maybe a little controversial, but you can adopt a more flexible or team-based structure instead of a traditional hierarchical structure. So for example, if everything flows through a senior leader in your organization, fund a project that doesn't require the senior leader's input. You note the final little caution on there: start small, but fund a project that the senior leader will have no control over. That person will provide funding for it. They may provide, it needs to address or be part of the overall vision and mission of the organization, but they're going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to delegate this authority to somebody else and let them run with it and then see what comes back. You might just be surprised with the outcome. So that's one of the ways we can try some new things, and that will help us adapt our strategy. Then we can evaluate what we tried. And I don't want to go too far into this because I will if we need to, but the only part that I want you to focus on most importantly is when you do your evaluation, evaluate your impact, meaning what was the change that was produced from the time your clients, your community started engaging with your program to after they completed your program, or after they went through whatever process or after they experienced whatever service you provided to them. What was the change? How did they change? Did they learn a new skill? Were they able to get into housing? Were they able to begin, some folks may be trying to help entrepreneurs. Were they able to start their business? Were they able to get their licenses, right? What was the impact? When you are evaluating your program, do an impact evaluation, because I think that's going to give you greater clarity on what is actually making a difference. Of course, you also want to listen to participants in your program, members of the community you serve, and really getting that direct feedback will make all the difference in the world, because when you get direct feedback from the participants you're serving, it will improve your programming exponentially. And then once you've gone through that process of trying, evaluating, then it's like let's tweak, let's make some tweaks. And I this little line right here that I wrote is so critical. A tweak is just an adjustment, and an adjustment can be as simple as the language you use to communicate what program, communicate the program that you're offering. That's a bit of a typo there, but to communicate the program that you're offering, it can be that simple. Sometimes when we actually go back to the laboratory, we listen to the input that we had from the community members that we serve, and we actually take that in and we evaluate the impact that we made. We can then actually see, oh, wow, the thing that we were already doing a great job, it just wasn't, people didn't understand what we were offering. So they weren't taking, they weren't coming to the seminars, they weren't coming to the sessions, they weren't taking advantage of the services because they didn't actually understand what we were offering. And so it can be as simple as communicating differently about the program that you're offering. It can also be as significant as restructuring your entire program, but you won't know that. You won't know whether or not you need to restructure until you've actually done an impact evaluation. And we can talk more about that. An example of this is the Inner City Muslim Action Network. And I know since this is a FACE initiative, the homeboy industry actually was started out of a Christian, I believe Catholic church, and this is the Muslim Action Network that is based in Chicago. I thought these might be helpful if we have organizations that are faith-based on the line to kind of see that this is happening. This kind of adaptation is happening in the faith-based space. So the Inner City Muslim Action Network, established in 1997 in Chicago. It initially focused on basic social services. The organization, however, soon recognized the need for more comprehensive strategies to address the complex, interrelated issues facing the community, right? We don't just deal with people as one issue that we deal with. People are complex individuals, so the issues that we face are complex as well. And the Inner City Muslim Action Network realized that, so they embarked on an adaptation process where they sought to enact a holistic approach. So they expanded their services and they developed programs that dealt with both physical and mental health. They developed an arts and culture program. They instituted a leadership development program, and they made sure that all of this had the underlying heart of social justice, right? To make sure that every aspect of their program was actually focusing on creating justice, equity, and inclusion for the population that they serve there in Chicago. They realized, as part of that, they realized that they just didn't need to provide community health services virtually, or for folks to be able to pick up a phone, or for them to provide a referral service, but they decided they actually needed a physical presence in the community. So they developed a community health center, which has a number of health resources, and they serve their community regardless to the patient's ability to pay. So anybody can walk through the door and get services, no matter what kind of services they may need. And then they also established a green reentry program, which is their construction program that they've created for those who are reentering citizens. And it's having an incredible impact. They've been able to lower the recidivism rate for those who come through their program, and the percentage I don't have top of mind, but it has been absolutely spectacular. I am missing a slide there, but they went ahead and did their implementation, and their implementation resulted in also increased funding for their organization. They're not quite at 60 million like Homeboy Industries, but they're well over $10 million a year, and they're having a continued impact in the community that they serve. So I've been talking a little bit here, and I'm going to just pause the presentation for a second, because I feel like there are a few notes in the chat. Okay, all right, just folks putting in their information. Yeah, okay, very good. Any questions so far on this first step? That if we're going to actually have impact, we have to adapt our strategies so that we can become more effective in delivering on our organizational promises. Any questions? If not, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay. All right, excellent. All right, so now we want to move on to this second step, and that is not only do we want to adapt, but we want to collaborate, right? Find partners. If we find partners, we can increase our impact. We don't want to do this alone. We want to be able to become part of or build a group of organizations that can work together to make a lasting impact in our community, right? So we got to adapt our strategies, but we don't want to just adapt our strategies. We got to work together, everybody. And I want you to lean into this, because when you're looking for collaborative partners, there are a few things you should look for. I know we talk a lot about collaboration, or at least the idea is there. I think all of us on some level believe that we're better together, but I also realize it's real difficult to actually find partners and then, establish trust between organizations, and then truly work collaboratively in our programming in a way that creates impact. I understand it's real difficult. So here's a few things for us to look for. The first one is for us to look for organizations where we share that our purposes complement one another. You want to look for organizations that have similar goals or missions, right? And you'll find often, if you are connecting, or if you're actually not operating in a silo, you're going to find some of those other organizations, whether you're showing up at the same meetings, whether you're trying to vie for the same dollars, you're going to discover some of those organizations if you don't know them already. And it may take a little work for you to say, okay, I've got to be intentional about sitting down and having a conversation. If you're the lead of the organization, then you're going to try to connect with the other leader in the other organizations. or if you are somewhere on the organizational structure, you may have to say, look, I want to reach out to XYZ organization. Are you comfortable with that? You know, saying that to your superior or to the leader of the organization, I think is critical if we're going to maximize our impact. And so look for partners that share a similar purpose. Then also look for resource compatibility. Find organizations that can contribute needed resources and benefit from the resources that you have. So I'll go back to the example that I gave you earlier on, and I'm going to share a few more, where Volunteer Match provides a resource that other nonprofits need, right? Nonprofits need volunteers, but it's often very hard to identify the kinds of volunteers that you need on an ongoing basis. And so Volunteer Match says, hey, we'll come along and we'll help you source some of those volunteers, and we'll source them in a way that connects their skill set to your need. Right now, that's a large organization, but you can do that on a small level, where there may be organizations that are in your ecosystem that have certain resources, and you have other resources, and the two of the organizations can come together to deliver a greater impact. I think the other thing that you also have to look for is cultural fit. Seek partners with compatible values, behaviors, and work styles. This one's a little harder to discern at times, but as you start building the relationship, I think it'll be clear about what organizations are similar from an organizational perspective. And then last but not least, when you're looking for partners, consider reputation and credibility. Ensure that potential partners have a positive reputation and are trusted in their field. You cannot afford for your organization or your mission, most importantly, to be contaminated in any way, or be invalidated in any way because of the lack of credibility or the poor reputation of one of the partner organizations that you have associated your organization with. So that one is really important. The advantages of collaboration are more than I can put on this slide. So I put a lot, and you can go back after the presentation and look at all of them. But there are tremendous advantages to collaborating with other organizations. And one of those is the third bullet point down, which is shared expertise. Organizations mutually benefit from each other's skills and knowledge. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're not making the kind of impact that we could make, because we have, first of all, a lot of organizations that are doing the same things. And then secondarily, we have organizations that are strong in one area, but are weak in other areas and are not leveraging the capacity of other organizations to balance out their weaknesses. And so this is so important, because we're not all going to do everything well. We're just not. And if I could just say something that's in my heart, not only are we not going to do everything well together, we're not going to do everything well individually, but the other piece is that, nor are we supposed to do everything well, right? Like we have to be able to focus on the critical aspects that will deliver on the mission of our specific organization, and then partner with other organizations that can help balance out and provide expertise where we don't have the expertise in-house. And we got to be willing to share that. I know sometimes we can protect what we have because we don't want to lose it, but we got to be willing to share because that's how we're gonna get better. Of course, it strengthens our influence. I want to jump down to the one that says sustainability. Partnerships foster more resilient structures for longer impact. If we're truly concerned about rooting out the root causes of the symptoms that we see, right? I mean, any of us can talk about the challenges that currently exist in the Bay Area, right? There are, increased crime, there's increased homelessness, we have issues with literacy, there are challenges with health and wellness services that are available. There's not enough of the kinds of jobs that produce gainful employment in this very high cost of living area, right? And so we see these issues. We might have a bleeding heart. We desire to actually make a difference. We go out to make an impact, and that's great. But because we don't have the infrastructure to actually resolve the root cause, then our efforts either don't have the impact that we desire, fail after a period of time, or are otherwise hampered from delivering on what we on addressing the issue. And so if we want to have a sustainable impact, then we really should be thinking about how to collaborate with other partners so that it will foster a long-term impact. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I want the work that I do to live on for generations after I'm gone, right? I want that work to continue so that it's not just good for the moment, but future generations will continue to build and iterate and improve on the work that we started, right? But if our work dies with us, right? Or if our work only addresses just a few people, or only serves a few people, then I think what ends up happening is that it generally over the course of the life of the organization, the impact is going to plateau and then ultimately decline, and it won't be sustainable like we initially hoped that it would be. So partnerships help to address that, and then partnerships also create a competitive advantage. And I use that word intentionally. Normally, when we think about competition, that's a business word, but I use that word intentionally because collaborations create a competitive advantage for funding. And that's specifically what I want to point out. There's a lot of other notes here that I put down, but the thing that I want to point out is it creates a competitive advantage for funding. One organization may not be able to get the $10 million grant, but maybe 5 organizations coming together could. And if those 5 organizations are able to participate in the process of writing a grant and show how each organization will be able to deliver on a particular proposal, then it may increase the likelihood that a funder is going to fund that project versus a project that is submitted by a singular organization. So you may want to consider that as something that you take very seriously as it relates to accessing increasing funding. With each of these, I'm going to have an example with each section of this presentation. I have a few examples. And for this, I wanted to point to a few organizations that I think are doing a really good job at partnering and collaboration, and maybe it might spark something for how you can collaborate. These 2 organizations are called Good 360 and All Hands and Hearts. Good 360 is an organization that helps companies distribute excess goods to nonprofits. In fact, some of you might have received some goods from Good 360, but they partnered with All Hands and Hearts because All Hands and Hearts is a nonprofit that's dedicated to disaster relief. Through this partnership, Good 360 provides All Hands and Hearts with needed goods like building materials, which All Hands and Hearts then uses in their disaster recovery work. So this partnership amplified the impact of both organizations. Now both organizations are able to go to their donors and say, look what we're doing, look how we're helping to make a greater impact in the various communities where we serve. And so this is one example. Another example is Kiva and Axion. Kiva is a platform that crowd funds loans for entrepreneurs in underserved communities. And it's partnered with a lot of microfinance organizations all over the world, but one is Axion, and it's a global nonprofit committed to creating a financially inclusive world. And so what Axion did is it used Kiva to vet all the borrowers and administer the loans that it was giving to these various individuals and small businesses all over the world. So they said, we don't have the technological infrastructure to vet everybody, to make sure that everybody we want to give a loan to actually is credible, or that they've passed the background checks or gone through the whole process. So Axiom is like, look, let's use Kiva's platform to vet our borrowers, and then we'll take that information and use that to decide who will receive the various microfinance loans that we're giving. Again, a wonderful partnership that amplified the impact of both organizations, and it increased their reach and their influence as a result. Again, another story that is good to tell to your donors. This last example is an important one, and that's the crisis text line. And many of you may be aware of this, that the crisis text line, they have partnered with a number of schools across the country to provide mental health services to students who are experiencing a crisis, because schools and the crisis text line realized they didn't have everything that they needed to reach the students that they wanted to reach, and the schools didn't have everything they needed to serve the students that were going through crisis. So they have now partnered in a way that allows them to utilize text messaging in order for students to get support in the time of crisis when there may not be a school counselor available. So these are just examples. Hopefully there's a spark that's flying in your mind about how you can potentially partner with organizations that are in your ecosystem, because I believe partnership will improve our impact, and it will allow us to deliver a better outcome on the mission and goals of our organizations. All right, here's the last one that I want to deal with, and that's impact funding. Funds follow impact. Again, we're talking about how we can have a greater impact. And I know everybody's saying, David, you don't have to call me Dr. David is fine. David, this is all good, but we need more money. We need more access to funds so that we can do a better job at delivering on our mission. And I hear you. Okur is trying to access more funds as well. And so I understand that, but here's what I want us all to understand. And I need you to know that I'm talking to you as much as I'm talking to myself. Increasing impact gives your organization a better story to tell. And I don't care how small or how large your organization is, we all can increase our impact. And when we're doing that, it gives us a better story to tell to our individual donors. It gives us a better story to tell to our corporate donors. And it definitely gives us a better story to tell to our philanthropic foundation style donors. And so I can't say that enough, can't harp on this enough, that increasing our impact gives us a better story to tell. And focusing on impact strengthens your story and gives confidence to your donor that your organization is delivering on its mission. So again, heavy text-rich slide here, but I'm doing this so that you can go back. If you miss something I say, you can go back and read it. And I want to give you 5 things that I think are critical for us to use if we're going to leverage impact to increase our organizational funding. And here's the first one. Quantify and communicate your impact. And look at this last little note that I put there under that section. Clarify what you count. If you're going to quantify your impact, then you have to clarify what you count. What do I mean by that? I want us to be able to say with clarity, X amount of people have been served through our organization. Not only have they been served, but X amount of people have been able to now rise out of the condition that they were in prior to experiencing our services, right? Or going through our program. You clarify what you count. What you count is what gets funded. What you count is what gets funded. And I don't want us to focus on numbers in a way that we're just trying to numbers, but I do think we can't ignore them, right? So there's this balance. I don't want us just producing grant proposals that give numbers that we have X amount of people attend, right? I think you hear my heart on that already. We talked about that earlier. Our focus should be on counting our impact, not just on counting the folks who show up, right? We don't want to just run numbers. At the same time, if you are not just counting people who showed up to your program, but people who were actually successfully impacted by your program, then you are actually not only telling a better story, but you have better outcomes to discuss and utilize when you're trying to communicate your value to potential funders. The second one is use impact stories. Right? I'm going to, again, go to the last part of that little paragraph where it says, make the abstract personal. When you're focusing on impact, you, as we said earlier, will have a better story to tell, which means you will have some clients, you will have some individuals who will embody the results that you're looking for. They'll embody it because they've gone through it. Their lives are changed. They're living a better life. They're living a higher quality of life. And so now you've got a story to tell, but it's not just a story about our numbers. I can actually show you a person or persons that have gone through our process and they are the better for it. So use impact stories to drive organizational funding. Here's the third thing: align your fundraising goals with impact goals. I'm going to read this one directly because I want you to get it. Instead of just asking for money, tie fundraising goals to specific impact goals. For example, set a fundraising goal of $50,000 to provide meals for 10,000 families, right? This allows a donor to see exactly what their donations will achieve, increasing the likelihood that they'll give. And that should be a period at the end of that. My apologies, but that's the goal here. We want to be able to say, look, we need this much money. If we get this much money, we'll serve this many people, or we will, again, impact this many people. And when your fundraising goals are directly tied to impact, and you are able to say with clarity that this amount of money will produce this level of result, when you're able to say that with clarity, man, your fundraising is going to radically change. You're going to radically change, and you're going to do something else. I know I keep harping on this story piece, but it's so important. You're going to empower your other team members. Your organization is going to have the employees, the volunteers, they're going to be empowered to tell your story as well. So when your fundraising goals are tied to your impact goals, it's not just that you are speaking with greater clarity, you're also helping others to go run with your story, and they'll reach people that your marketing or that your brochures, your email blasts will never reach. Two more things for you in terms of how to use impact to increase organizational funding. The fourth one is engage in transparent financial reporting. This is so important. And I think when we increase our impact, this gets easier to do. Show how funds are used directly for mission-focused activities. Transparency in financial matters builds donor trust and can lead to increased contributions. I can't say this enough. There are large donations out there that will never come until you produce transparency in your finances. And again, this is a level that we can all get better at. And you, in this case, it's always good to work with a financial, your CPA or whoever's doing your yearly audits, or even your in-house financial manager, to make sure you're sharing the right information. Obviously, there's some information that is confidential, but transparency in financial reporting is critical. And then the last one, going back to point number 2 of this presentation about collaboration, if we're going to focus on impact and we're collaborating to create greater impact, then leverage those partners that you now have in order to increase funding. Work with those partner organizations to broaden your fundraising approach and network. And here's an idea. Maybe there's an opportunity to co-host events together, or to describe in your marketing material how a donation to one organization will benefit both organizations, right? So now a donor feels like I'm getting double the value out of my donation by giving to this organization, because they're not only going to use it to impact their program, but because of their partnership, they're going to reach X amount more people. And so again, leverage those partners because that will help to increase your funding in your organization. So in conclusion, and I'm happy to go in more detail. Some of that, we went through pretty fast here. But in conclusion, I want you to choose impact over charity. I want you to choose impact over charity, because I believe choosing impact will foster sustainable solutions instead of temporary relief, right? Not only to choose impact over charity, but I want you to choose adaptive strategies over static strategies, because adaptive strategies enable us to be more responsive to the needs of our community. Choose also collaboration over isolation, because collaboration fosters shared resources. It diversifies our idea pool and increases our reach. And then lastly, choose impact fundraising over program fundraising. So critical. Impact fundraising focuses on the long-term goals and systemic changes organizations seek to make, and increases the trust of your donors. I believe wholeheartedly that if we follow this process to adapt, to collaborate, and to focus on impact funding, we will not only increase our impact, but we will also increase the impact of the organizations around us, and our communities and our members will be better for our efforts. So with that said, I want to take an opportunity and stop sharing my screen here and ask if we have any questions, and invite us to have a deeper dialogue as we go through the process, the remainder of our time together.
Dr. Franklin, may I start?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So I agree with you, as usual, 98.99% on everything.
Well, we're going to get the
I just want to ask,
the last percentage point right now. We're going to get that last percentage point right now.
we're never 100%, but we're going to try. We're going to try. Okay, so here it is. Impact versus strategy. And I'm sorry, versus charity.
Yes.
And with our communities in such dire straits, with kids not having food, people not having, how do we is there a way that we can bring those together? Because we can't ignore the charity when people are starving, or when people are out in the elements with no place to be. But at the same time, granted, you have to have impact. You just can't keep rolling along in the same mode. So what do you say about accomplishing both? Do you have some sage words on how we can do both? Because as people of faith, we're never going to walk away from charity, even though it makes sense to focus on impact. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I hear this, and I'm so glad you brought it up because it's the very reason why I started the presentation with this. I want to be clear that there is a place for charity. And if you're running a program that is charitable, I'm not telling you to stop it. What I do want you to consider, though, is where are the opportunities for your organization, your church, your mosque, your synagogue to not only take care of the immediate need that someone has, but to resolve the root cause of the reason why the problem existed in the first place. Because what is happening right now, and this is why my heart is here, is that the problems, and particularly the symptoms of those problems, are outpacing our ability to resolve the symptoms, right? And here's what I mean is that when you look at housing, one of the problems that they're facing right now is they cannot build enough affordable housing quick enough.
Right.
And so let's think about, yes, don't stop building affordable housing, but what's the opportunity to help folks to be able to avoid even ever having to need affordable housing in the first place? Now, again, that's a larger, more complex discussion. It's harder to address, but if we were collaborating with an ecosystem of support, ecosystem of organizations, and we said to ourselves, listen, we want to increase the opportunities for gainful employment so that folks don't ever have to be homeless in the first place. As a group of organizations, we might actually be able to at least make some headway on preventing homelessness rather than just trying to cure it after it happens. And so again,
we're looking at a Venn diagram, really. We're doing the collaborating, we're addressing the charity, we're addressing the impact, we're looking at the whole picture, I hear you saying.
Yes, we want to ensure that we are at least considering how we can move beyond meeting temporary relief to actually resolving the root cause.
Thank you. Hunter.
All right, there's a hand being raised, and I think there's a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can I suggest that we unmute Michelle Edmonds, or unless there was another hand that was raised first?
No, I think
Michelle,
she was.
Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, Dr. Franklin. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was an excellent presentation. And I think valued. I took notes. I know you said not to, or you said only take the things that would be significant. But one of the early points, and I think you wrapped it up towards the end, but I just wanted to ask a question on behalf of myself and others. You said rigid strategies create tense work environments, right? And then you spoke at the end as rigid or static strategies, but choosing adaptive strategies. Could you speak to how rigid strategies create tense work environments? Because I think sometimes we're moving so hard towards the goal or towards the solution or towards the people that we're helping that we don't actually recognize some of the dynamics within our organization that we need to attend to until there's a crisis meaning somebody is unhappy or somebody's leaving or there's been a failure in the organization. And that's when you start to uncover some of these difficulties. So could you speak to how rigid strategies create tense work environments and how we can address that within whether it's volunteers, unpaid work, or paid staff? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and maybe a whole workshop in and of itself. But so good in that I think part of your question is also answering your question in that here, let me answer it this way. Here's how you know you have a rigid strategy. When new ideas don't have a home. And what I mean by that is that any ideas that come up are not they have no space to be fleshed out, right? There's no room to be massaged. There's no time where they can be appropriately considered, right? And the reason why I think it creates tense work environments is because I believe we're naturally creative people, even people who don't think that they're creative. They actually want to add value to, especially at a nonprofit or a faith-based organization. We want to add value. And so when we're not able to improve or iterate on what we are attempting to accomplish, when we're not able to say, you know what, I see something new, or I had a conversation with one of the community members that we serve, and I think we ought to consider how this could be implemented into our programming. When there's no space for that kind of back and forth dialogue, then people feel like I'm just going to do my job and go home. And that creates, I think, a tension, because then I'm not bringing my best self to the organization. I'm bringing the self that I think the organization will accept. I'm bringing the ideas that I think the organization will accept, and not the best ideas or not the best, contributions. And so that's how I think it creates a tension, because we want to do better. And I think when we create space for folks to add their input and that input creates greater impact, then it loosens things up a little bit and invites folks to get excited about what they do every day.
Thank you. I think that was excellent. I appreciate that. It really is about letting everyone come to the table and having input. And if I hear you correctly, then that also reflects on how funders see us, right? Because we can say, well, I've got staff input that is creating iterative change, or I have volunteer input, or I have participant input, and that is how we are adapting what we need to our community.
That 1,000%. Did we get that on tape? Did we get that on tape? See, there you go. I'm dating myself, right? Did we record that? No, but that's it. That's it, Michelle. Look, if you are able to sell your organization and say, look, we're having an impact with our members, our community members is when I say members. We're impacting our community members. Their lives are changing. We're taking feedback from those same individuals, and that feedback has influenced our strategy. And we have staff who are coming to the table, and they are, after having conversations or because of their expertise, are able to give input and shape the direction of the organization. I think a funder is going to see that and say, you know what, that's the kind of collaborative environment that I believe the money that I'm going to invest can grow in. So yeah, you nailed it. So I'm glad we were recording, because we were going to clip that out and put that somewhere.
Thank you, sir. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. I think we had another hand raised.
Yeah, Ms. Mwale Fowles has a question that she also put in the chat, but her hand's raised too, so she might just want to say it out loud.
I was just going to add to the anecdotal aspect of what you and were just discussing in terms of programs that have excellent models, but they don't know how to expand on the models to add skill bases and things that would enhance the empowerment of the clients being served. And I think that that's something, and people get wedded, as you said in your earlier comments, they get wedded to the model, and they can't seem to break out of the model, or they don't see that there is a third leg to the triangle.
Mhm.
and they don't recognize that the skill base of the person receiving the services has to be increased or strengthened or brought along with the thing that they are learning to parrot, literally parrot, but they don't really understand what it is that they're doing. They're just doing it because they're in the program and it gives them food, shelter, and clothing, or whatever the momentary relief is, but they don't see the long-term effect of being able to self-negotiate their position so that they don't fall into that position again. And I'm working with a homeless client as we speak, who's having that very same problem and has been in housing and has had access to clothing and shelter and a whole bunch of stuff, but was not brought along in terms of his ability to negotiate with the society or the agencies in the society that are supposed to help him.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're doing now. We've got a 5-week deadline before he exits the program.
Oh,
So
man.
I just wanted to mention that because sometimes it may be as simple as a literacy issue, or it may be something as simple as an anger management class or an anger management consult, or it may be something as simple as just saying, you know, you really write well, you should be a writer.
Mhm.
Little things like that sometimes make the difference in the impact, because then that gives the person the motivation to go forward, makes your organization look good. Oh yeah, they built me up, they empowered me, they gave me my sense of self back. Sometimes that is even more important than just saying, you know, okay, here's a plate of food and come back tomorrow, we'll feed you again, blah, blah, blah.
Listen, you're on the money. I don't have anything to add to that. I do want you, if you would, you asked a question that I think is important in the comments. Would you mind just asking that question out loud?
Sure. We get people who want to volunteer with us. We're Manna from Heaven Breakfast Program, a roof over their heads, emergency to permanent housing. So we get people who want to come in and do some work and hand out food, because we have a pantry as well as a breakfast program. They're ready to go, but they don't have a clue about what we're doing because they haven't bothered to sit down and read our website or ask how their particular skills, or explain why they even want to come volunteer. They just want to volunteer to be volunteering. And that in and of itself is good, because we're always short of volunteers, always.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had student groups come through and they have had, you know, the Christian motivation, because that's part of their training in whatever college or program they're in for Christian education. They come through in the summertime and they work themselves to death, and which is fine. But individuals sometimes come with no philosophical or no personal idea of how they fit into the overall organization's needs. And when you try to tell them that, well, we can only accommodate you at certain hours, you know, like our program, we feed people at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, I can't come at 6 o'clock. Well, okay, so can you come like between 10 and 2 when we do the pantry? Well, no, I'm at work. I don't get off till 3:30. Well, with 3:30, we're all gone because we've been there since 4 o'clock in the morning. So our 12-hour day is up for us, is over. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that some people have come and wanted to volunteer because they really wanted to take our ideas and go get it funded for themselves. And we knew that, so we didn't take them. But we did have to talk to them for a while to see that. Fortunately, we did not allow them to start. So it wasn't a matter of having to say, well, I'm afraid your activities are not in keeping with what we're about, or they came in with attitudes, you know, toward the patrons, or they came in with attitudes toward the staff, and all our staff are volunteer. So the issue is that how do we go about vetting the volunteers? Because sometimes senior leadership says, oh my God, we've got 2 people here, we got 50 people standing outside who want to be fed. you know, and then one or two folks will call up and say, well, can we come volunteer? And then they run over, you know, like they're going to volunteer for 15 minutes, not realizing that this is a 2-day, 5-hour commitment in the mornings, and then, you know, some more commitment on a Wednesday evening. And
Yeah,
we have to get senior leadership to realize that you don't just need a warm body, you need a warm, a fitted purpose. That's the question I wanted to ask you. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think I want to answer it maybe in a practical way. I think the first, I think there is, I mean, yeah, let me answer it in a practical way. Getting folks to be effective volunteers is the work that any volunteer-based organization has to continue to get better at. And so there is generally some kind of orientation process that an organization that has volunteers is going to establish that helps folks, once they come through the door, then to embody, to the best of that organization's ability, to embody the values of the organization while they are participating in the service that that organization provides. And so it's part of the work, I think, is not necessarily even with the senior leader. I think it is, hey, what's the opportunity to develop an orientation process that's fast, because it sounds like it needs to be fast, that covers all the key points and will improve the attitude, the disposition, the level of service that people volunteer, when they volunteer, that they bring to the table with them. And so, you know, is there a 15-minute orientation process, a 10-minute even orientation process that you can implement that will get folks kind of out of whatever their initiatives are, or their thoughts are, and you know, allow them to serve in the way that would be helpful to your organization. I think the other thing is, as it relates to senior leaders, you know, that it depends on the situation. And that's why I want to think about what's possible. Some senior leaders, quite frankly, are just not going to change. Others, through a process of conversations or helping them to be exposed to the way other organizations are doing it, sometimes that can help. So there's a number of different things that, as it relates to senior leaders, that might be valuable. But as it relates specifically to improving how volunteers serve, I think that orientation process or protocol and continuing to iterate and tweak on that is going to help you to have better success with those who are walking through your doors.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Happy to. Thank you for the question. Okay, good. Shai, do you see any other comments, or do we have any other folks who want to ask anything in out loud? Anybody else bold
I
enough?
believe so. Not that has nobody that's made themselves known yet, at least.
All right. Well,
Enjoyed your presentation. Thank you so much.
oh, my pleasure. I didn't see who that was, but my pleasure.
I come under the name of Michael, but I'm Gladys Sewell.
Oh,
his
very
wife.
good. Very nice to meet you, Gladys. Glad to have you with us today.
Glad to meet you, sir.
Yes, yes.
And I'm glad to be here today, very much so. Very informative.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad it was helpful, and that's really our heart. I'll say this, and I know we have a poll or an evaluation thing you want to put up, Shai, and so I'll just say this in closing. You know, OCUR has been around, whether you know it or not, 67 years, and so we've been in the game for a little while, and been running a number of programs over that time. And our heart, really, as an organization, is to make all of us better, right? We are not interested in trying to address these issues alone, nor are we able to, right? Nobody is able to do it alone. If we're going to address the root causes, as I talked about, and have the kind of impact that will really make a difference over the long term, a sustainable impact. So I'm excited to be in this role. I'm excited to meet many of you meet you virtually, but continue to meet you over the weeks and the months to come. And I believe that if we partner together, if we focus on addressing the systemic issues in our community, the future generations will be better off for it. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for being a partner already with OCUR, and I look forward to continuing to serve you over the years to come. Thanks so much, Carmen. I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so again, I just want to echo what everyone else has said. Thank you so much for attending today. This was a lot of really good information, and I'm glad that you were here. Just want to tell you, Shai, can you put up the, okay. So we're going to be doing some work with well, first of all, let me thank Dr. Franklin. I don't want to neglect to do that because that was an excellent presentation, a lot to digest. And I hope that we will have an opportunity to ask some more questions of Dr. Franklin on this, and maybe through, Dr. Franklin, do you have a preference, maybe through email or through the website somewhere, or if folks just think of their questions maybe later, that they might be able to communicate with you in some way?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide my OCUR email, but I'll tell you, to make sure that I don't miss it, it would be better to send questions, just related to the presentation, to info@ocurnow.org. And Shai, if you could put that in the chat for me, info@ocurnow.org. And then I won't be the only one who sees that. And, we can make sure that you get a response back.
Right, good enough. And that's really good, because I think that it's going to be really important that everyone who attended, and even those who couldn't attend, stay connected on this really important topic, because if you look at our communities, this is right on time, and we need to hold on to it and as we move forward. Our next presentation for next month is going to be about getting your board of directors right. Of all the questions we get in capacity building, the biggest question is, what chatting out here. But anyway, the biggest question we get is how do we build our board, and how do we switch gears on our board? So that's going to be coming up for our next training, which is going to be on